In a big, quiet house at the edge of a small town, lived 3 little children. They were triplets, 3 babies born at the same time, but something was very different about them. They did not speak. Not a single word. Their names were Mia, Sam, and Nora. Mia was the oldest by just a few minutes, with soft brown hair and big curious eyes. Sam was the middle child, quiet and serious, with a small dimple on his cheek. Nora, the youngest, was always watching the world with wide eyes, her small hands often clutching a tiny stuffed bear. The children's father, Mr. Lee, was a busy man. He was the CEO of a large company and spent most of his days in meetings, talking on the phone, and making important decisions. But at home, he felt helpless and tired. The house, which should have been full of laughter and noise, was filled only with silence. The silence had not always been there. When the triplets were born, they cried and cooed like all babies do. But slowly, as months passed, they stopped trying to speak. No sound came from their lips except the softest whispers and little noises that were never words. Mr. Lee had tried everything. He hired maids to care for the children, but they soon gave up because they did not know how to handle the quiet triplets. He called doctors and therapists, hoping someone could help the children find their voices. But no one could. One nurse told him gently, "Sometimes, children need time and patience. Forcing them won't help." But Mr. Lee was running out of time. He felt the weight of the silence every day. His heart ached when he saw the triplets playing alone, looking at each other but never speaking. He missed the sound of their laughter. He missed the sound of their voices. His wife, the children's mother, had passed away 6 months ago. She had always been the one to care for the children, to soothe them when they cried, and to encourage their first words. Without her, the house felt empty, and the silence grew deeper. Mr. Lee sat in his office late one night, staring at the photo of his wife and the triplets. Tears filled his eyes. He wished he could do more for his children. They needed someone who could reach their hearts, someone who could bring back the joy and words they had lost. The next morning, Mr. Lee made an important decision. He called his assistant and said, "Find someone who can help the triplets. We need a special person, someone patient, kind, and strong. If they can help my children, I will pay anything." Days passed, but no one seemed to be the right fit. Some people were too strict, others too busy. The triplets stayed silent, their small world locked inside their quiet minds. In the meantime, the children's lives continued with the same routine. Mia, Sam, and Nora woke up early, dressed quietly, and played gently with their toys. Sometimes they would draw pictures with crayons, or stack blocks very carefully. But never a word was spoken. Mia liked to watch the birds outside the window. She would press her face against the glass and smile when a small sparrow landed on the branch. Sam loved to build things with his blocks, making tall towers that he would knock down with a soft giggle. Nora held her stuffed bear close and liked to sit in the corner, looking at everything with wide eyes. Though they did not speak, the triplets understood each other perfectly. They shared a secret language of glances, smiles, and small touches. But to the outside world, their silence was a wall no one could break. One afternoon, Mr. Lee sat in the living room, watching the triplets. Mia was stacking blocks, Sam was drawing with crayons, and Nora was hugging her bear. Suddenly, Mia looked up and smiled at her father. It was a small smile, but it was full of hope. Mr. Lee smiled back, feeling a warm feeling in his heart. He whispered, "I promise, Mia. Someone will come to help." We will find a way. That evening, Mr. Lee made a phone call. His voice was steady but hopeful. Please, find someone special. We need a miracle. Little did he know, that call would change everything. The next morning, the house at the edge of town was quiet, as usual. Mia, Sam, and Nora sat in the living room, playing with their toys. Outside, the sun shone brightly, but inside, the silence was still heavy. The triplets had not spoken a word in months, and no one knew how to reach them. Meanwhile, across town, Tom was finishing his breakfast. Tom was a single father and a veteran. He had spent years serving his country and had faced many hard times. But now, his greatest joy was his little daughter, Lily. Tom knew a lot about patience and love. He had learned how important it was to listen not just to words but to feelings. Tom worked at a small community center, helping children with special needs. When he received the call from Mr. Lee's assistant, he was curious but cautious. The job was unusual, a family with triplets who did not speak at all. No one had been able to help them. Still, Tom felt something in his heart. He knew he could try. Maybe, just maybe, he could make a difference. On the day Tom arrived, the house looked grand but cold. The walls were full of pictures of the triplets, but the smiles in the photos seemed far away from the quiet children inside. Tom stepped inside, carrying a small bag with toys and books. The triplets stopped what they were doing and stared at the new man. Mia's eyes were wide but calm. Sam sat quietly, and Nora hugged her bear tightly. Tom smiled gently and knelt down to their level. "Hello," he said softly. "My name is Tom. I'm here to spend time with you." There was no answer. The triplets just looked at him, their faces unreadable. Tom was not discouraged. He knew that building trust would take time. For the first few days, Tom did not ask the triplets to speak. Instead, he played quietly beside them. He drew pictures, built blocks, and read books with soft voices. Sometimes, he sang gentle songs that filled the room with warmth. Mia was the first to respond. One morning, Tom noticed Mia watching him carefully as he painted a small picture of a bird on the wall. "Do you like birds?" Tom asked softly. Mia nodded, a small smile appearing on her lips. Tom's heart warmed. He whispered, "Maybe you can teach me how to paint like you." Slowly, Mia began to sit closer to Tom during playtime. Sam watched from a distance but did not join yet. Nora clung to her bear but sometimes peeked over the top to see what Tom was doing. Tom talked to them about simple things: the sun, the trees outside, the colors of the rainbow. He never rushed or pressured them. His patience was like a quiet river, steady and calm. At night, Mr. Lee came home and found the house feeling different. The silence was still there but softer, less heavy. Tom sat on the floor with the triplets, and they looked at him without fear. Mr. Lee asked Tom quietly, "Do you think they will speak again?" Tom smiled gently. "They are already speaking, in their own way. It's just quiet for now." Days passed, and small changes happened. Sam started to smile when Tom showed him a toy car. Nora reached out her hand to touch Tom's jacket softly. Mia talked with her eyes and sometimes made small sounds. One afternoon, Tom took the triplets to the garden behind the house. The sun was warm, and the flowers bloomed in bright colors. Mia touched a yellow flower and looked at Tom. "What's this?" Tom asked. Mia pointed to the flower and made a soft humming sound. "That's right," Tom said, "it's a flower. Beautiful, isn't it?" Sam and Nora watched quietly, interested. Tom picked a flower and gave it to Nora. She smiled and hugged it to her chest. The triplets began to trust Tom more and more. They felt safe with him, and the house started to feel like a real home again. One evening, after dinner, Tom sat with Mr. Lee in the living room. Mr. Lee looked tired but hopeful. "Thank you for coming," Mr. Lee said. "I was afraid no one could help them." Tom shook his head. "They just need love and time. I will not give up on them." Mr. Lee looked at Tom, his eyes full of gratitude. "Please, don't leave us. We need you." Tom smiled warmly. "I'm here for as long as you need me." That night, the triplets slept quietly, but something had changed. The silence was no longer empty. It was filled with the soft promise of hope. And for the first time in many months, Mr. Lee felt peace in his heart. Maybe, just maybe, everything would be okay. Days passed, but the silence inside the big house did not disappear overnight. Tom knew it would take time, patience, and care to help the triplets find their voices again. But every small moment gave him hope. Every morning, Tom woke early. He would quietly prepare breakfast, making sure the triplets had their favorite foods ready. Mia liked honey on her bread, Sam preferred soft scrambled eggs, and Nora always smiled when she saw fresh fruit. Tom never rushed the children. He understood that pushing too hard would scare them away. Instead, he moved slowly, speaking softly and letting the triplets decide when they felt safe to join him. One morning, after breakfast, Tom took out a small box from his bag. Inside were colorful blocks, simple puzzles, and soft toys. The triplets watched as Tom placed the blocks on the floor and began to build a tower. Mia's eyes sparkled with interest. She crawled closer, carefully touching a red block. Tom smiled warmly. "Would you like to help me?" he asked gently. Mia nodded and slowly picked up a blue block. Together, they built the tower, block by block. When it was tall and wobbly, Tom pretended to be surprised and gently knocked it down. The tower fell with a soft crash. To Tom's surprise, Mia giggled a soft, light sound that filled the room with joy. Sam and Nora looked up, surprised by the noise. Tom's heart lifted. Encouraged by Mia's laughter, Tom reached out to Sam. "Would you like to build too?" he asked. Sam hesitated, then slowly crawled forward. He picked up a yellow block and placed it carefully on the ground. Tom smiled and nodded. "Great job, Sam." Nora watched quietly but did not move. Tom decided to sit beside her, holding her small hand gently. "Do you want to play too, Nora?" he whispered. Nora looked at Tom, her eyes shining with trust. Slowly, she reached for a soft teddy bear Tom had brought. She hugged it close and smiled. Tom knew these were small steps, but they were important. The triplets were beginning to trust him, and in that trust, there was hope for healing. After playtime, Tom suggested they go outside. The garden behind the house was full of flowers and green grass. The fresh air and sunshine gave the children a new energy. Tom showed them how to look for butterflies and listen to birds singing. Mia pointed to a bright red butterfly, and Tom quietly named it. Sam watched the birds fly, and Nora touched the soft petals of a flower. Tom spoke gently to them about the world around them. He did not expect words in return. Instead, he listened to their quiet responses, the way Mia's eyes followed the butterfly, the way Sam's fingers touched the grass, the way Nora's small hands held a flower. One afternoon, Tom decided to try something new. He sat down with the triplets and began to draw pictures. First, he drew a smiling sun, then a tree, and finally a small house. Mia watched closely and reached for a crayon. She drew a round shape, then some lines. Tom smiled and said, "That's a flower." "Beautiful." Sam took a crayon next and carefully made shapes on the paper. Nora watched quietly but then touched the paper with her finger. Tom praised them softly. "You are all very good artists." For the first time in many weeks, the house felt alive with quiet happiness. The triplets still did not speak, but they began to share moments of joy and connection. One evening, after dinner, Mr. Lee sat in the living room watching Tom with the children. His heart felt lighter than it had in months. "Thank you, Tom," Mr. Lee said quietly. "I don't know how you do it." Tom smiled and shook his head. "They are amazing children. They just need love and patience. That's all." Mr. Lee looked at the triplets playing quietly and whispered, "I hope they will speak soon." Tom nodded. "They will. When they are ready." As the days turned into weeks, the triplets showed more signs of life. Mia would smile and sometimes hum soft tunes. Sam began to make small sounds, like whispers. Nora would reach out to touch Tom's hand or hug her bear tightly when she felt happy. Tom knew the road ahead would be long, but he was ready. Every small step was a victory, every silent smile a promise of better days. One afternoon, as the sun warmed the garden, Tom sat with the triplets under a large tree. He told them stories about his daughter Lily and how much he loved her. Mia listened closely, eyes wide with wonder. Sam leaned against Tom, feeling safe. Nora held her bear and smiled softly. Tom looked up at the sky and whispered, "Together, we will find your voices. I believe in you." And for the first time in a long time, the house at the edge of town felt like a place of hope. The quiet house had slowly started to change. The triplets, Mia, Sam, and Nora, were still mostly silent, but small signs of life began to appear. Tom's gentle care was like a soft light in the darkness, slowly warming the cold silence. One chilly morning, Tom woke the triplets with a warm smile. "Good morning," he said softly. The children looked at him, their eyes calm but curious. Today, Tom had a special plan. After breakfast, Tom gathered some simple kitchen tools and ingredients. He wanted to bake cookies with the triplets. Baking was something they had never tried before, and Tom hoped it would bring out more of their feelings. Mia, Sam, and Nora followed Tom into the kitchen. Mia looked around quietly, watching every movement. Sam helped carry the mixing bowl carefully, and Nora held her stuffed bear close but stayed near Tom. Tom smiled and said, "We are going to make cookies. Would you like that?" The children nodded quietly. Tom began mixing flour, sugar, and butter in the bowl. Mia watched him carefully. He handed her a wooden spoon, and her small hands wrapped around it with care. "Can you help me stir?" Tom asked softly. Mia looked at the spoon, then at Tom, and slowly moved it in the bowl. The mixture turned smooth and creamy. Tom nodded with encouragement. Sam watched from the side but did not join yet. Nora stayed close to Tom, looking at the bowl. Tom added chocolate chips to the mix and let the triplets take turns putting the chips inside. The kitchen filled with the sweet smell of baking cookies. Mia smiled softly, and Tom could see happiness shining in her eyes. When the cookies were ready, Tom took them out of the oven and placed them on a tray. The triplets crowded around, their noses close to the warm treats. Tom handed Mia a cookie. She looked at it for a moment, then took a small bite. Her eyes widened, and a small smile appeared on her face. Sam reached for a cookie next. He held it carefully and bit softly. Nora watched him and then took a bite herself. Tom sat with the triplets at the table. The warmth from the cookies seemed to melt some of the silence. Suddenly, Mia looked up at Tom and whispered, "More." Tom's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Mia, his eyes wide with surprise and joy. "You said a word," he whispered back, "more." Mia nodded slowly, a shy smile on her face. Tom smiled gently and said, "Yes, more cookies." Sam clapped his hands softly, and Nora pointed at the cookie tray. Their small faces were filled with happiness. Mr. Lee, who had been watching quietly from the doorway, felt tears well up in his eyes. It was the first time he had heard his daughter speak in months. He stepped inside and said softly, "Thank you, Tom. You have brought something back to this house." Tom shook his head, still amazed. They just needed time and love. That evening, the house felt different. The silence was no longer heavy but light and filled with hope. Mia sat close to Tom on the couch, holding a cookie. She hummed a soft tune and looked at him. Sam showed Tom a small drawing he had made earlier, a sun with smiling faces. He said softly, "Sunday." Nora held her bear and smiled. When Tom said, "Bear," she nodded happily. The triplets were speaking. Not yet in full sentences, but small words that showed their feelings. Mr. Lee sat with Tom and said quietly, "I don't know how to thank you. You have given us a gift." Tom smiled and replied, "The gift is theirs. They are finding their voices, and I am just here to help." The next days were full of small surprises. Mia learned to say please and thank you. Sam practiced saying hello and play. Nora smiled whenever Tom said her name. Tom continued to build trust with the triplets. He never pushed too hard, always encouraging their tiny steps with patience. One afternoon, Tom took the triplets to the garden. The sun shone brightly, and the flowers were in full bloom. Tom picked a bright yellow flower and showed it to Mia. "What's this?" he asked gently. Mia looked at the flower and said softly, "Flower." Sam watched and repeated, "Flower." Nora reached out and touched the flower petals carefully. Tom smiled with pride. "Good job." The triplets were learning about the world again, not only through sight and touch but through words. At night, when the house was quiet, Tom thought about how far the children had come. He remembered the long silence and the hope that was slowly growing. He sat by the window, looking out at the stars. He whispered to himself, "They are speaking. They are healing." Mr. Lee joined him and said softly, "You have changed our lives, Tom." Tom smiled and replied, "We are all changing together." The journey was not over, but the first words had broken the silence. And with every word, the triplets were coming back to life. The quiet house at the edge of town was slowly filling with light and sound. The triplets Mia, Sam, and Nora were beginning to find their voices, and Tom, the veteran and single dad, felt hope growing every day. Their small words were like little stars shining in a dark sky. One morning, Tom woke early and prepared breakfast. The smell of pancakes filled the kitchen, and the triplets came into the room with sleepy eyes but smiling faces. After breakfast, Tom suggested a game outside in the garden. The sun was bright, and a soft breeze moved the leaves gently. Mia, Sam, and Nora followed Tom to the green grass, curious about what the day would bring. Tom brought a colorful ball and placed it on the ground. "Let's play catch," he said with a smile. Mia looked at the ball and then at Tom. She reached out and touched the ball gently. Tom rolled the ball toward Mia, and she pushed it back with a soft giggle. The sound surprised Tom. He looked at Mia, eyes wide with happiness. Sam watched closely and soon joined. He caught the ball with both hands and threw it back. Nora, still holding her stuffed bear, smiled shyly. For the first time, the triplets played together, laughing and chasing the ball across the grass. Tom felt tears in his eyes. The house was no longer silent. It was alive with laughter. After the game, Tom sat with the triplets under the shade of a big tree. Mia rested her head on Tom's shoulder, Sam held Tom's hand, and Nora hugged her bear close. Tom told them stories about his time in the army and about his daughter Lily. The triplets listened quietly, their eyes full of wonder. Suddenly, Mia let out a small laugh. It was a soft, musical sound, like a bird singing. Sam and Nora looked at her and smiled. Tom smiled warmly. "That's a beautiful laugh, Mia," he said. Mia giggled again, and Sam tried to laugh too. Nora joined in, and soon the three children were laughing together, their voices filling the air with joy. Mr. Lee, who had been watching from the window, felt his heart swell with happiness. He stepped outside and said softly, "Thank you, Tom. You have brought laughter back into our home." Tom shook his head. "They brought it themselves. I just helped them find it." Days passed, and the laughter grew louder. The triplets played games, told stories with their small words, and learned new things every day. One afternoon, Tom took them to the local park. The children ran freely, their smiles bright and full of life. Mia climbed the slide carefully, Sam chased butterflies, and Nora swung gently on the swings, her laughter ringing clear. Tom watched, his heart full. The triplets were growing stronger, braver, and happier. At home, Mr. Lee began to spend more time with the children. He learned to play with them, to listen to their quiet words, and to enjoy their laughter. One evening, Mr. Lee sat with Tom in the living room. "I don't know how you did it," he said. "But you saved my family." Tom smiled softly. "They saved me too." That night, the triplets slept peacefully. The house was filled with the warmth of love, hope, and laughter. Tom knew there would still be challenges ahead, but for now, they were together. And that was enough. The days were growing warmer, and the air in the house felt lighter than ever before. Mia, Sam, and Nora were no longer the quiet children who sat alone in silence. With Tom's care and the growing love around them, they were slowly beginning to live fully again. One sunny morning, Tom decided it was time for something new: a trip to the nearby lake. The lake was peaceful, with soft water that reflected the blue sky and green trees. Tom hoped the fresh air and gentle sounds would bring more smiles and maybe even more words from the triplets. After breakfast, Tom packed a small bag with snacks, water, and a blanket. He told the triplets, "We are going on a little adventure today." Mia's eyes brightened. She whispered, "Adventure." Sam smiled and nodded. Nora hugged her bear tightly but looked excited too. They climbed into Tom's old, reliable car and drove slowly toward the lake. Along the way, the triplets looked out the windows, watching the trees and fields pass by. When they arrived, Tom spread the blanket near the water's edge. The triplets sat down and looked at the sparkling lake. Tom threw small stones into the water and watched the ripples spread. "Look at the water," he said softly. "It moves and changes, just like us." Mia reached out and touched the water with her fingers. The cold made her giggle, and she said, "Cold." Sam smiled and picked up a smooth stone. He threw it into the lake, making big ripples. "Splash," he said with excitement. Nora stood up and slowly walked to the water's edge. Tom followed quietly, giving her space. Nora knelt down and picked up some wet sand. She molded it carefully in her hands, making little shapes. Tom sat beside her and said gently, "You are creating something beautiful." Nora looked at him and smiled shyly. After a while, Tom took out a small notebook and colored pencils from his bag. "Would you like to draw the lake?" he asked. Mia took a pencil and began to draw the water, the trees, and the sky. Sam made waves with his pencil, and Nora drew little flowers by the shore. Tom watched them, amazed by their creativity. The children were opening up in ways he had never expected. As the sun began to set, Tom packed their things, and they headed back home. The triplets were quiet but happy, tired from their day in the fresh air. That evening, Mr. Lee noticed something new. Mia spoke her first full sentence. "I like the lake." Tom smiled warmly and said, "Me too, Mia." Sam added, "Water splash fun." Nora looked at Tom and whispered, "Bear sleep." The small sentences were like music to Tom's ears. The triplets were growing not only in words but in confidence. Days passed, and the house continued to change. The triplets played games, learned new words, and laughed more than ever before. The silence that once filled the rooms was gone, replaced by the joyful sounds of childhood. Tom and Mr. Lee worked together to create a routine for the children. They had story time every evening, playtime in the garden, and quiet moments to rest and think. One afternoon, Tom took the triplets to the community center where he worked. It was a bright, happy place filled with other children and caring adults. At first, the triplets were shy, but Tom stayed close, holding their hands and encouraging them gently. Mia started to play with other children, sharing toys and smiles. Sam joined a small group for drawing, and Nora sat quietly with Tom but watched the other children with interest. Tom saw how the triplets began to grow in the company of others. They were learning not only words but how to connect with people around them. That night, Tom sat with Mr. Lee. "They are ready," Tom said softly. "Ready to face the world?" Mr. Lee nodded. "Thanks to you, Tom. You saved my family." Tom looked at the children sleeping peacefully upstairs. "They saved me too." As the moonlight filled the house, Tom felt a quiet peace inside him. The journey was far from over, but a new beginning had arrived. The triplets were speaking, laughing, and living again. And with every step forward, the house became a home once more. The house was no longer quiet. It was alive with laughter, words, and love. Tom sat in the living room, watching Mia, Sam, and Nora play together. The triplets had come so far since that first day when they would not even look at him. Now, they ran freely, their voices full of joy. Tom felt a warm feeling inside. He knew the journey had not been easy, but every moment had been worth it. One afternoon, Mr. Lee came into the room, watching the children with a smile. "Tom," he said softly, "I don't think I can ever thank you enough." Tom shook his head gently. "You don't have to thank me. You and the children gave me a second chance, too." Mia came over to Tom and hugged him tightly. "Tom," she said clearly, "thank you." Sam and Nora joined, and soon all three children were hugging Tom, their small voices full of love. Tom smiled, his heart full. "I will always be here for you," he promised. That night, As the triplets slept soundly in their beds, Tom sat by the window, thinking about everything that had happened. The silence, the pain, the tears, it all seemed like a distant memory now. He knew the children still had challenges ahead, but they were no longer alone. They had a family, a real family. The next morning, Tom took the triplets to the park again. This time, he brought a kite. The colorful kite danced in the wind, soaring high above the trees. Mia laughed as she held the string. "Fly, fly," she shouted happily. Sam ran beside her, helping to keep the kite in the air. Nora clapped her hands and smiled. Tom watched, feeling grateful. The triplets were growing stronger every day. Later, as they rested on the grass, Tom spoke softly. "You are brave. You are strong. And I am proud of you." Mia looked up and said, "We love you, Tom." Tom's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too." When they returned home, Mr. Lee waited at the door. "I want to tell you something," he said quietly. "Because of you, I have hope again. I want to be a better father, a better man." Tom nodded. "You already are." Together, they decided to work as a team. Mr. Lee would be more present in the children's lives, and Tom would continue to support and care for them. In the weeks that followed, the house became a place of laughter, learning, and love. The triplets learned new words every day and even started singing simple songs. One evening, during story time, Mia said, "Family is love." Sam added, "Home is safe." Nora smiled and whispered, "We happy." Tom looked at the children and knew that their words were true. They had found safety, love, and a home. The community around them noticed the change too. Neighbors would smile and wave when they saw the triplets playing outside. Teachers at school praised their progress and kindness. Tom felt proud but never forgot the hard days. He knew that love, patience, and understanding had made all the difference. One morning, as the sun rose, Tom stood at the door and watched the triplets leave for school. Mia held her backpack tightly, Sam waved to a friend, and Nora skipped happily beside them. Tom whispered to himself, "This is just the beginning." He smiled, knowing that no matter what the future held, they would face it together as a family. And in his heart, Tom made a promise, to always be there, to always believe, and to always love. Because sometimes, all it takes is one person's care to change the lives of many.